A Banjo Swordsman, Part 1, M-56. In a small apartment kitchen, old, dirty, plastic furniture scattered under black-stained ceiling, Doc sits at a dining table, strumming a banjo. Still wearing a lab coat, he is waiting, singing softly, "Wake up, my little bug, that cherry Sunday." He's stuck. He strums again, but with a different melody. "Cherry blossom mug?" he continues, uncertain. "Hold on tight and snug. You'll be all right, my love." He considers, then starts anew with another variation. "Sing a song of cheer. No, a tune of cheer." He scrunches his brows in frustration, losing steam. "This is stupid," he mutters, abandoning the instrument. He swings back his head, groaning, straining to escape from festering anxiety. "I need a smoke," he tells himself. Heading out to the balcony, Doc takes out a cigarette. Situated a few stories up, he leans on the railing to take in a full view of the neighborhood. Down below, a dreadful avenue, destitute, drug-infested, and filled with husks of human beings roaming about, without shelter, without care. A desolate wasteland. Gobi Street is in shambles. Violent coughs and screams rampant, a hotbed of despair. No willing person would ever want to set foot in this abandoned part of town. Doc surveys the street, and without much effort, he spots a shady deal right at a corner. Further down, he sees tents and mattresses set up by groups of homeless citizens as means of survival. He looks directly below and notices a man stumbling about, clearly under the influence. The man staggers behind a dumpster to relieve himself, but unable to hold steady, he falls into his own puddle, urine still streaming. "Nice," Doc remarks, taking out his lighter to ignite his cigarette. Before he is able to light it, he hears the voice of his assistant Sarah yelling from inside. "Everything's ready, Doc!" He steps away promptly from the balcony, putting down his smoke. Through the kitchen, Doc makes his way down a small corridor toward his makeshift laboratory. He walks past a closed door, on which hangs a sign written "Delilah" in colorful pastel. He stops before the door, leans in to listen. He hears not a peep. A slight look of concern spreads across his face as he continues down the corridor. Entering the lab, he sees that Sarah has already laid out his test subjects on a table. The lab is filled with equipment of all sizes, machines whirring, lights blipping among computer terminals, tubes and containers arranged neatly, a facility distinct from the rest of the apartment, an entirely different world, one that even looks valuable and taken care of. Hearing strange thrums from the ventilation fan, Doc questions, "Is that gonna work for us?" "It'll have to," Sarah replies. A young and enthusiastic face, Sarah stands and awaits for Doc's proceeding. Also donning a lab coat, this one labeled with her name, S. Ward. She wears gloves, a mask and goggles, well prepared for what comes next. Doc steps up to the table and examines the test subjects. 3 small cadavers of doves laid out in separate trays, side by side. "So which one's which?" he asks. Gesturing toward the first, Sarah answers, "This one is deceased 1 month, then the next 1 week, and the last 1 day." "Excellent," Doc says. "Let's begin." Sarah then hands him a flask filled with a substance. M-56, she specifies. Thank you, Sarah. Receiving it, he pours a portion of it on the first subject. They await in anticipation for a result. Nothing. Moving on to the next, he does the same thing on the week-old carrion. Still nothing. Finally, arriving at the third, Doc looks at Sarah for a sense of assurance. She looks back in search of the same. He then takes a long breath and pours the substance. Nothing yet again. Disappointed, but not entirely fazed, Doc puts down the flask. I expected as much, he comments. Final subject? Sarah asks. Yes, bring her out. She then takes a tray and walks over to the other side of the lab. She approaches an unusual-looking metal box the size of a small safe. On the top of the box, there is a screen panel. Sarah places her hand on it, and the screen lights up with a beep upon recognizing her palm print. The cover then lifts by itself. Within the box is another dove, submerged in a purple gel with a tube inserted into its beak. Carefully, Sarah removes the tube, takes the body out, then places it on the tray. Doc picks up the flask of M-56 again as she returns the final subject. Severely injured, untreated, suffering major organ failures, Sarah reports. Unable to resuscitate before M-stasis. She was just about to die. How long in stasis? Doc asks. 6 months. Very well, he acknowledges. Let's give it a try. Tilting over the flask above the dying bird, he sees his hand shaking. Tell me, Sarah, Doc says, if this were to fail, how much money do we have left? With a slight frown, Sarah gives it to him straight. We'd barely have enough for M-57. Okay, he mutters. Here we go. He then pours the remainder of the substance onto the dove. Sarah leans in to watch with eager expectation. A blast of purple haze bursts out, clouding up the entire laboratory as if someone dropped a smoke bomb. Get it out! Get it out! Doc screams, coughing. Turn up the fan! It's as high as it goes! Sarah yells. I can't see anything! He complains, rushing toward the window, opening it in a frenzy. Holding their breath, the two launch their whole torsos outside, barely keeping themselves from falling down the building. They find relief to finally inhale the rancid air of the back alley. Massive plumes of purple smoke come out of the window as they take a moment to catch their breaths. What just happened? Doc asks. Did it work? With a thick cloud dissipating, Doc and Sarah turn toward the table to see. They find standing on the tray the once dying bird risen to vivacious life. A beautiful creature of ivory majesty in statue-like splendor, even thrice its former size. Oh my days, Doc mutters. Rendered speechless, Sarah stares wide-eyed in consummate awe. The dove raises its beak and issues the richest, most resonant coo the two has ever heard. Doc breaks into the widest smile as he approaches the renewed being. I shall name you Zipporah, he says, in exuberant glee. The dove echoes, Zipporah, as she stretches out her wings, knocking over everything on the table, then with magnificent grace glides out through the window, flying free. Did she just talk? Sarah asks, still recovering from shock. We may have turned her into a parrot, Doc answers, still grinning like a child. To celebrate, later in the afternoon, Sarah brings over a bottle of sparkling wine and 2 glasses to Doc's office. She knocks on the door. Come in, he says. Hearing a crack in his voice, she pauses, then enters slowly. She sees Doc and notices him wiping away some remnants of tears. I haven't been here in a while, she remarks. Doc, finding himself at a momentary loss, gives her an awkward nod. M-56 is a success, she breaks the ice. Yes, indeed, Doc responds enthusiastically. Although, as you may already know, this is not the end. We still have lots to do. Certainly, Sarah replies, as she sets the glasses down, pouring wine into them. But I suppose we can take a breather, Doc continues. For now, take it easy, make a full crate of it, and secure it in storage. Make sure you don't tell anyone. You got it, she confirms, handing him a glass. Cheers, he receives. Sarah then looks around the room, seeing cabinets, a futon, and a messy desk. Upon the walls there are certifications and pictures, most of which are of his wife and daughter. One of them is an old newspaper clipping with the headline, Project Methuselah. Could this be our future? It was Delilah's birthday last week, Doc says. I'm gonna make it up to her tonight. Sarah laughs and comments, Finally, about time. You better do something good. With a nervous chuckle, Doc sways in his seat. She's grown up fast, Sarah adds. Morgan would be so proud. He ponders for a moment, then asks, You think so? Sarah nods. She's still out there, asserting gently, full of hope. With a smile, Doc considers. She raises her glass. He does the same in unison. Suddenly, Doc notices the time on the clock and remarks, Oh, it's getting late. Hurriedly, he hands his wine back to Sarah, gets up to leave, and repeats on his way out, Remember, don't tell anyone. Entering Delilah's room, Doc rests his gaze upon his fast-growing 7-year-old in her colorful bedroom. She lays silently on her bed with headphones on, drifting away. Troubled upon seeing this, he calls to her, Hey, little bug, get dressed, we're going out. Where are we going? She asks, not removing her headphones. You'll see, now get moving, Doc insists. Reluctantly she gets up and joins her father. They come out of the apartment and enter an old elevator. Stepping out into the garage, Delilah spots a furry black cat roaming about. Stringer, she calls, crouching down, extending her hand toward the cat. Stringer approaches, welcoming her touch. He's hungry, she says. We can't keep feeding him, Delilah. Let's go, Doc urges. Where are we going? She inquires again. He replies, Like I said, you'll see. Still remaining, she mumbles to herself, while the cat turns to Doc with its big, round eyes. All right, fine, Doc says, slightly annoyed. We'll save him some fish. Hearing this, Delilah perks up. We're going to Doug's? Promptly they get in the car and drive out through Gobi Street. That jarring sight of emaciated men and women still present, drenched thoroughly in intoxication. Upon seeing it, Delilah's little face falls expressionless. In the moment they finally leave the area, Doc lets out a sigh of deep relief. Heading to the other side of town, Delilah becomes more lively again in anticipation. They arrive at Doug's Fish and Chips and pull into a parking spot. Doc shuts the ignition, then sits in silence for an awkward moment. What's the matter? Delilah asks, seeing her father looking quite tense. Oh, what? Oh, nothing, he replies. Aren't you glad to be back? He chuckles. Let's go in. They enter the diner and the server greets. Hey, how are you? Long time no see. Very well, thank you, Doc replies. Scanning around, a bothersome sight alerts his attention, just as he suspected. He sees leaning in their seats, young ruffians donning a variety of jackets with identifying symbols on their backs. Oh no, he mutters, as he becomes acutely aware of the presence of local criminals infesting the establishment. Pulling up Delilah's hood, Doc's unease becomes painfully apparent. It's gonna be okay, he assures. Come on, let's eat at the counter. Why, Dad? They're free tables, Delilah protests, as she turns to point out vacant spots. Don't let them see you, he whispers forcefully, pulling her away. Complying with her father's insistence, she props herself up onto a stool with considerable struggle. Her feet dangling, her hands holding onto the edge. To find some vestige of comfort, she rests her chin on the countertop. What'll we have? The server asks. Can we get a 1 piece for her and 2 for me, please? Doc answers. Sure thing, coming right up. Still alert, Doc surveys the room discreetly. He sees that the kid has not caught anyone's attention yet. Looking outside the window, he spots a car pull up to a parking spot. Then a man wearing a long blue coat meanders out. Tall, lean, ordinary, non-threatening. Everything seems to be in order. He relaxes a bit. Delilah, seeing something that catches her attention, straightens herself, then glares at a lineup of condiments on the counter. She examines each one with odd curiosity, then remarks, Hey, they changed the ketchup. What? Let me see, Doc says, indulging in her sense of intrigue. He grabs a bottle to look. Are you sure? He double-checks. Mm-hmm, she nods. Entering the diner, the man wearing blue finds a table and sits. Delilah turns to look and recognizes him. Hey, it's Principal Brown, she exclaims. Hearing his name, the man meets her eyes. Delilah, he shouts joyously. Oh boy, Doc whispers, as he sees the unexpected reunion drawing unwanted attention. What are you two doing here? Principal Brown excitedly asks as he approaches. How are you doing, Doc? He greets, smiling radiantly as he steps into the midst of the two, stopping entirely too close. At this distance, Doc cannot help but notice the make of his coat. It is of premium quality, well kept with attentive care. I'm all right, thank you, Doc replies cordially, albeit visibly tense. We've come here for a little celebration, for her birthday. Ah, happy birthday, Delilah. What a treat, Principal Brown remarks. You're all grown up now. Look at you. It's been a while, he continues. In fact, we've all missed you so much. She smiles earnestly. I am so glad to see you here, the principal says. You know, Doc, I gotta say, we haven't been the same without her. We appreciate it, he replies absently. Growing ever more in his discomfort, Doc looks around the diner and occasionally out of the corner of his vision sees leering glances from unknown individuals. He is not sure if their recurring ganders come out of natural curiosity or of more nefarious intentions. What happened, Doc? Did she drop out? Principal Brown asks. Oh, no, we just decided to homeschool, Doc replies. Oh, as a man of my profession, I am inclined to take that as an insult, the principal jests. Sorry, didn't mean to. Looking away, he then catches a glimpse of the bottle of ketchup that he still holds. Delilah, tell me you miss us, Principal Brown teases. She withholds her reply momentarily. Yeah, she confesses. This year has been really rough on her, Doc interjects, as he surreptitiously loosens the bottle cap. We ran into some financial issues. While speaking, Doc squirts a lump of ketchup on the lower part of the principal's coat. He then uses the bottle to slightly rub it in. Oh, Doc, I'm sure we can sort you out. A pupil like Delilah comes once in a blue moon. We'd be delighted to have her back. By the way, how's Morgan doing? Hey, what's that? Doc points at the stain on his coat which he created. The principal then turns to check and sees the bright red spot. Oh, he says, startled, as he twists his body to give it a proper look. My coat, I didn't see that. Feigning concern, Doc offers his piece of advice. Doesn't look like it's been there for too long. Maybe you can wash it off easily. The principal snatches a napkin from nearby and tries to wipe off the stain. He is unable to. I must have sat on some sauce, he speculates, looking quite bothered. If you'll excuse me. Certainly, no problem. Doc sends him off. Principal Brown then dashes for the washroom, running out of sight. Doc turns to Delilah and commands, "Let's get out of here." "What? Why?" Delilah asks, baffled. "We haven't even gotten our food." "That's all right, I've got that covered," Doc says with a smile. Turning to the server, he raises his voice. "Can we get our food packed up here, please? Quickly." The server nods, then turns to the kitchen. Doc checks his wallet, looking through the few banknotes he has. Forget it, he grumbles under his breath, taking out a $100 bill. The server returns with their 2 orders packed up neatly, holding a red bow in his hand. Doc passes him the 100 and utters, "Keep the change." "Thank you, sir," the server replies as he ties the bow around Delilah's order, presenting it to her with a wink. "Happy birthday," he congratulates. With a delightful grin, she receives the gift. Sitting back in their car at the parking lot, nightfall approaches. Doc and Delilah watch from a distance as they enjoy their fish and chips, looking into the diner. They see the washroom door open. Principal Brown walks out. He struts over to the counter and shows a faint expression of surprise. Scanning around to search, he looks quite disappointed to realize that the 2 have left. He then returns to the table he first sat at, checking the seat thoroughly before he sits down. Peering at the man, Delilah discerns a look of confusion on his face. "Is this good or what?" Doc exclaims, taking big bites out of his piece of fish. "So glad we came." Smiling, Delilah takes a chunk off hers. "We gotta enjoy this life once in a while, am I right?" He gives her a nudge, laughing, letting loose. Delilah looks on, almost in shock to see her father in good spirits. It seems that this outing is doing the old man more good than it is for the belated birthday girl. They share a moment of contentment as they devour their rare treat. "Why did you put ketchup on Principal Brown?" Delilah asks out of the blue. "You saw?" Doc replies, shaking her head. "No, the stain just wasn't there at the beginning," she says. Ashamed and slightly impressed, Doc lets out a faint chuckle. "You're a sharp one, kid." He then takes a deep breath to gather his thoughts, turning to face his daughter. He explains, "Sometimes you just have to get out." Promptly, Delilah meets his gaze with a confused look. He continues, "If you can find a way to escape, you should take it." "Was something gonna happen, Daddy?" she asks, seeing a quiver in his face. Caught off guard, he lifts his eyes as a deep surge of terror electrifies his entire being. Attempting to contain an outburst of fear, he reassures, "No, everything is all right." Then with a firm grasp, he reaches over her shoulders and embraces her with sudden, intense ardor. "You're with me, Delilah. You'll be all right," he adds. "I'll make sure of it." Nestled in her father's bosom, she takes a moment. "Guess what, little buck?" Doc begins again with a nervous grin, still having her leaning on him. "I've got another surprise for you." Stammering, he continues. Actually, I meant to give it to you last week." but I'm not sure if it's ready. It's something I've been working on for a while now. I just hope that, you'll see. He starts to sweat. Actually, you'll hear, because it's something you can listen to, yeah? Yeah. You want to guess what it is? He stumbles through his words nervously. Delilah? Doc gives her a nudge. She does not respond. Hey, Delilah? She still does not respond. Baby? What's the matter? He asks. Doc holds her back up and sees that she has fallen unconscious. Delilah! He screeches, trying with all his might to wake her up. It is not working. He checks her pulse and finds that it is becoming extraordinarily weak. He then checks her breathing. Somehow it has also turned faint. Delilah, wake up! He screams, grasping his head, aghast in disbelief. Seeing his daughter turning pale right before his eyes, unable to help, he watches in anguish as her motionless body lay in his arms. No! Doc searches around, scanning for clues in a desperate panic. Looking at her order of fish and chips, he suddenly notices something buried beneath the fries. Snatching it out, he sees a slip of paper and reads, Pay up, Doc, or she'll be gone in 24 hours. Petrified, sitting with his mouth agape, he pulls out the red bow that was wrapped around her meal package. He lifts his head toward the diner and sees the server. Doc then comes to a dreadful understanding. He starts the car and slams on the gas, zooming through the streets without regard, weaving through traffic along tight bends, running red lights, swerving around pedestrians in the night. There is only panic in his eyes. Narrowly escaping death at every turn, he hears honks and cries from outraged protesters. There's no time for this, he curses, shutting out the city's screams. He turns a sharp corner and almost spins out of control. With a sharp steer, he clears himself of a terrible collision. Feeling a slight sense of relief, he focuses ahead. He hears raging honks and a walloping crash. Wait, was that an accident? He looks into the rearview mirror, but cannot see a thing, as he has already sped away. Skidding into Gobi Street, he zigzags through an overwhelming amount of wandering street folks sauntering down the middle of the road. Move, he screams, as they sluggishly clear out of the way. Arriving at his apartment, he pulls up to the side of the road. Daddy's gonna be right back, okay? He tells an unconscious Delilah as he gets out of the car. Scrambling to unhook his keys from his pocket, he marches up to the front entrance. To his chagrin, he finds a drooling homeless fellow in nothing but his underwear, grunting in a drunken stupor, laying against the door, blocking the entrance. Oh, great, Doc bemoans, as he begins to nudge him away. With great struggle, putting his entire weight into the effort, he finally tips the fellow over. The man slumps to the side, plopping down with a thud, groaning. Having the obstacle cleared out of the way, Doc unlocks the door and barrels in. Avoiding the rickety, slow elevator altogether, he charges up the stairs. Barging into his own apartment, he enters the laboratory and begins his frantic search. M-56, M-56, come on, where are you? He grumbles as he claws his way through. Unable to find any trace of the substance, he swings his head around to see a big crate with the name S. Ward labeled on it. This has gotta be it, he says, scuttling toward it. He tries to open the crate, but it is shut too tight. You gotta be kidding me, he says through gritted teeth as he continues his attempt. What are you doing here? Doc freezes in place as he hears Sarah's voice behind him. He turns around and finds her standing in the doorway. Oh, he answers. I forgot something. I came back to get it. Are you okay, Doc? Sarah asks. You're covered in sweat. No, I'm fine, just... Doc fumbles. Is this the crate of M-56 I asked you to make? Yeah, Sarah nods. I'm just about to take it to the storage unit. Oh, fantastic! Doc responds entirely too enthusiastically. Sarah scrunches her brows in confusion, asking, Did something happen? No, of course not, says Doc. Hey, you know what? I'll take this to the storage myself. What? No, she protests. It's just downstairs. I'll do it. Don't worry. No, I'll do it, he barks, almost screaming. Taken aback, Sarah glares at him in shock. Sorry, he slows down, wiping away his sweat. Look, you've had a long day, all right? Just get your things and go home. Stop working so late. Okay, sure, Doc. I was gonna see my friends anyway, she replies, retreating, clearly unsettled. All right, have fun then, he says, taking the crate, leaving Sarah standing in silence. Doc exits the apartment and heads downstairs. He runs out, almost tripping over the scantily clad homeless fellow he previously shoved over, then slams the crate on the roof of his car. The sudden noise jolts the drunkard awake, startling him as he lets out a lazy grumble. Immediately, Doc goes for another attempt at opening the crate. Hooking his fingers around the lid, he tries his hardest to pry the cover open. With much effort, he still finds it tightly shut. He tries yet another time, straining with all his might, and pop! The cover flies off, and along with it, a few vials of M-56 launch into the air. The drunk man sees and tracks them with his drifting eyes as they arc through, then watches them shatter and spill on the ground, one landing right next to him. The substance splashes out, with a large portion of it touching down on the drunkard's body. M-56 makes contact. A purple cloud bursts forth. Doc watches in horror as he steps back to secure the rest in the crate. As if hit by lightning, the man in underwear bounces up from the ground, suddenly sober. His physical form then begins to change as his previously shriveled body expands. His pale skin beginning to flush with vitality, his limbs gaining mobility. I live, he bellows as his eyes brighten. Upon seeing the drunkard's abrupt rise and transformation, Doc's mouth falls wide open. It works, he whispers in disbelief. Promptly, Doc scrambles to open his car door, but finds it locked. Before he is able to retrieve his car keys, the risen man comes up behind him, grabs him by the shoulders and turns him around. Give me your clothes, he screams into his face, terrified to his bones. What? Doc whimpers. The man screams again, to which Doc is only able to respond with a violent shake of his head. Growling ferociously, the man throws Doc to the ground with exceptional strength. Stop it, Doc pleads. Leave me alone. Still in a craze, the man starts mauling Doc, stripping his jacket and shirt away without effort. Grabbing a hold of his legs, he takes his shoes also. Give me your pants, the man orders, then grabs onto Doc's pant legs and begins to drag him across the ground. Doc yells out in pain as his bare back scrapes against the pavement. Okay, stop, he concedes, unbuckling his belt. With one swift pull, the newly revived specimen removes Doc's trousers, leaving him in only his socks and underwear. He puts on all his clothes, ripping them at the seams with his bulging physique, then turns his gaze upon the crate. His eyes bug wide open as he snatches the whole thing away, then sprints down the street. I'm back, baby! I'm back! He shouts, turning the heads of countless wanderers. Hey, give it! Doc demands helplessly as he begins a reluctant pursuit. Keeping his eyes on the man, Doc navigates through the grimy grounds of Gobi Street with extreme caution, stepping around loose needles, occasional piles of waste, and general filth. He strains to keep up. Give it back, you thief! Doc yells at the running man, attracting large amounts of attention. Doc sees scores of homeless men and women stopping in their activities. The sprinting man turns around mid-stride, looks toward every person in the crowd while running backward, elation overflowing, shouting, He brought me back to life! I owe everything to this man! Upon hearing the proclamation and seeing his unfathomable figure, swaths of street dwellers turn toward Doc, crowding around him, beholding in astonishment. They pack against him, even stepping on his toes. Get off me, Doc protests, their hands reaching out to him, grasping his bare skin in awe. Help me, one says. Help us, shouts another. Give us what he's having, demands yet another. Stopped in his pursuit, Doc glares at the faces surrounding him. What are you doing? Go after that guy! He took all my stuff! He yells. They look toward the running man and see the crate he carries. Get him! One of them rallies. Following their direction, the mass streams after the big man with sudden force. Doc gets shoved out of the way as they rush toward their target. He falls to the ground and gets stepped on immediately. curling up into a ball, he hopes desperately to survive. Crushed under boots, socks, and dirty feet, Doc holds on to his dear life as he hears the running man screaming in the distance, attempting to escape an overwhelming mob. The man comes to a door. He knocks on it with great urgency, seeing his pursuers fast approaching. The door does not open. He calls for help. Before any could come, the crowd piles on top of him, pulling him in every direction. One woman sees the writing S sword on the crate and shouts, "Get the sword!" as dozens of flailing hands latch onto it. Some taking vials, some wrap themselves around the crate. Some simply claw and scratch. They hang onto the substance with all they have. The ones that have taken the vials zip through the crowd attempting to escape, but get tackled down immediately. Some break free successfully, some losing their grip, dropping and shattering the substance on the ground. The running man himself scuttles out of the wild gathering and dashes away with Doc's clothes. Left laying on the pavement, Doc barely outlasts his trampling, sustaining wounds and bruises. He sees out of an underground garage a car driving out and turning away. "Sarah!" he mutters, groaning as he gazes upon her disappearing into the distance. Turning his attention back onto the scene, he witnesses total pandemonium. Throughout Gobi Street, fights and scuffles break out among those who have gotten their hands on the substance and everybody else. Some drink it without hesitation, some come into contact with the remnants that were spilled. Puffs of purple haze burst out at regular intervals among the mass riot. Those that receive their renewal of strength issue forth screams and roars, knocking over anyone with one fell swoop, if they dare to approach. Doc then sees a purple cloud emerge just near him, and looks at a man coming forth. The man now glistens with renewed vitality as he examines his own figure in euphoric disbelief. Stepping away from the raging mob, he runs off, bouncing up and down. Doc turns and sees a woman. Her previously shrunken body straightens. Her ashen skin flushes with a youthful effervescence. Her sunken cheeks fill to the full. Breathing without strain for the first time, she shouts with joy. Out of the corner of his eye, Doc spots a small creature coming onto the street. He takes a second glance and recognizes Stringer, the cat. Strutting onto the scene as if nothing is out of the ordinary, the cat approaches a shattered vial on the pavement and licks the substance that was spilled. In a moment's notice, out of another puff, the tiny creature grows to an absurd size. With a mighty roar, the cat takes on the figure of a royal feline, far superior than that of any kind. Newly endowed with abundant mane, an enormous stature, and a fearsome gaze, Stringer the cat has transformed into a colossal black lion. Immediately he starts thrashing about, leaping through the street. Seeing something afar off, with his newfound vigor, he charges down the road, running over the crowd, showing no regard. With panicked looks on people's faces, the ones in the way dive out, as Stringer begins to ravage everything in his path, knocking over a fire hydrant, spraying water all over the street. With just a few strides, Stringer bounds to the other side of the neighborhood and leaps over top a building. With a resounding shout, the lion disappears, leaving behind the echoes of his roar, sounding strangely human. Doc looks upon the beast's rampage in absolute shock, his gaze completely lost within the harrowing spectacle. Snapping out of his momentary daze, he looks through the impenetrable wall of the still crazed mob. Doc struggles to keep his eyes on the crate. Seeing the box getting snagged left and right, changing hands countless times in the middle of a riot soaked in water, he spots a man sporting a full tuxedo finally taking the crate away. Weaving into the violent stream of the burst hydrant, he shakes loose the crowd's vice-like grip. "Give it back, you olive grasshopper!" shouts a pursuer of his. His legs, not fast enough, get caught by a man diving onto him. He falls to the pavement, bringing the crate down with him. Before it hits the ground, another pair of hands snatch it away, stopping its fall. With great dexterity, the man in the tuxedo reaches in and swipes a vial before it is all taken away. The man in the tuxedo runs off. The one now with the crate scuttles off like the one before, with a host of runners trailing behind. The mob turns a corner and disappears. No longer able to keep track, Doc loses sight of his crate of M-56.